council meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
Mayor Ziegler,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Beagle,
Here.
Councilmember Gatchel,
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Here.
Councilmember Leader,
Here.
Councilmember Resnick,
Here.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. First item on the agenda this evening is a presentation. We had a life-saving incident occur at Moonlight Elementary School this past back on the 14th of this month, and Ron Moore, the Director of Public Safety, has a presentation and would like Ms. Doran to come on up.
The kids could come up too, that would be great. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Madam Clerk, Mr. Brown, members of the public. Thank you to the media that's here this evening to cover this wonderful, wonderful tribute that we're about to give to Miss Laura Doran. Miss Doran is a second grade teacher at Loon Lake Elementary School, right here in the great city of Wixom. And Mayor, as you said, on Monday, January 14th in the morning, she observed that one of her students, young Sienna, who's here with us, can you wave, Sienna? Young Sienna was experiencing some distress due to having a airway obstruction, Mayor. And Miss Doran sprung into action very rapidly. And in fact, she sprung into action so rapidly there really wasn't even time to call 911. And Miss Doran, without being overly dramatic, Miss Doran saved Sienna's life. And for that, our community, Laura, is very grateful to you. I know Sienna's family is grateful to you. They're also here with us in the audience. Mr. Gutman, Superintendent of Wally Consolidated Schools, is here with us this evening. I know he's grateful and proud of you as an employee. And we have many members here of the public. And I can tell you on behalf of Mayor Ziegler and the council, Mr. Brown, all the staff, and the men and women of the Wixom Police and Fire Departments, we are all incredibly proud of you. Many members of the police department are here this evening. We are all incredibly proud of you. And we're grateful that we're on the same team, on the same life-saving team. Laura, I have an award here for you. It's on behalf of the Wixom Police and Fire Department. And I'll read to you what it says. Life-Saving Award presented to Laura Doran, awarded this 22nd day of January 2019 for your dedication to the children of the community and for your fast actions in preventing serious harm to a child with an obstructed airway on January 14th, 2019. Laura, I'd like to present this to you. Mayor, if I may, I'll just introduce the kids that came up with Ms. Doran. Little Sienna, who's another one of our guests of honors tonight. Her sister Riley, Jackson, Elena, and Evan. They wanted to come up and provide a little moral support for Sienna as they presented flowers to Ms. Doran.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate everybody coming out. And the council also has a presentation to make as well. And what I'd like to do, I'll be there in a minute. Ron, can you stay there, please? And I'd like to, after the presentation of this, I'd like to break for about 10 minutes so everybody could, if anybody wants to take any pictures or anybody wants to have some conversation with anybody, that would be an opportune time to do that. So I'll be right there.
Is this
is one of the more fun parts of this job, is to give these sorts of dedications, because we're so proud of things like this, opportunities like this. So it's really a nice part of my job. This is from the council and the mayor. Whereas Laura Doran serves as second grade teacher at Loon Lake Elementary School in the city of Wixom, and whereas Laura Doran is committed to the education, care, and safety of children in the community, and whereas Laura Doran was selected as the 2018-19 Teacher of the Year for Loon Lake Elementary School, and whereas Laura Doran was teaching her second grade class on the morning of Monday, January 14th, 2019, and whereas Laura Doran was teaching 8-year-old Sienna Kavanaugh and her twin sister Riley on the morning of Monday, January 14th, 2019, and whereas Laura Doran observed Sienna Kavanaugh in distress due to a plastic water bottle lid obstructing her airway, and whereas Laura Doran acted quickly and decisively by performing the Heimlich maneuver on Sienna Kavanaugh, and whereas Laura Doran's quick and decisive actions dislodging the obstruction and allowed Sienna Kavanaugh to resume breathing, and whereas Laura Doran spoke with the local media and her address to the public warned other children not to put bottle lids in their mouths. And now, therefore, the mayor and the council of the city of Wixom hereby express sincere appreciation to Laura Doran, and that this proclamation serves as honor, tribute, and gratitude for her quick and decisive life-saving actions and for her dedication and care for the children in her community. Congratulations.
This feels a little strange because my comfort is being with small people regularly. But I just wanted to thank you all for the acknowledgement, even though it does feel a little foreign, because I know that I am not unique with my Wall Lake colleagues. I know that any and all of them would have done exactly the same thing that I did. But I definitely want to thank you for this honor. I feel like although I do not reside in Wixom, I have been serving Wixom for 21 years at Loon Lake Elementary. And I feel like they're a second home to me. I know Mr. Smiley's son I had in my classroom before. So I want to thank you. I think it's great that we have good news stories going on, because we have a lot of great things that happen every day. And this was certainly a very important great thing that happened, but it is certainly not unique to room 119 or any other classroom in Wall Lake. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
As I mentioned, why don't we take a little break, and maybe, I don't know if the council feels like it, maybe you could get up for a minute and come up front, and we could get a picture with you and the chief. And then we'll take a break and people can mingle for a while. Usually we have cake, but we have short
Somebody's
I have to do this. You have to do
Didn't you guys respond to it? No?
That was Jeff. First one was work. He's helping out with
Thank you. I'll call the meeting back to order in about 10 minutes, okay? Talk about Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting of January 8th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Any changes, anything to be brought to the attention of the clerk on this? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Correspondence, there is none. Next item on the agenda is the first call to the public. I'll read the rules for public speaking. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Anyone wishing to speak to the council this evening, address the council this evening during the first call to the public on agenda items, any agenda item? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the first call to the public. Next item on the agenda is the city manager's reports. I'll wait till the city manager sits down. Anybody have any questions on the city manager reports? Deputy Mayor Beagle.
Thanks. I got a question for Tim under the DPW report. Excuse me. It's got here that one of the things you did was moved illegally dumped brush from the DPW yard.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of it, and how did they do that? Because it's gated and stuff, so.
It's gated, we have it in the front there, they'll dump it in front, by the gate.
Do they do it very often?
Yeah, couple, 2-3 times a year.
Should we put a sign up?
We have signs.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gotcha?
Thank you. Following question, we put like a trail cam out just to see who's doing it?
We could possibly do that.
That'd be a good idea, I think.
Okay. I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else? Anybody? Mr. Resnick?
Just a question for Matt on the water report, or Tim. Go ahead. Any update on the testing and PFAS situation with Tri-Bar number 4? Are we directionally correct in the reduction?
Oh, yeah, the reduction's continuing. The most recent samples, give me a minute. I know they're still on the close to non-detect limit. I can't be specific, I don't have them in front of me. But they've put some additional processes in place. They have kind of like what we'll call it like a pre-filter, because they were having a lot of issues with the media gumming up and balling up and transferring between tanks. So they're trying to eliminate that by putting this pre-filter in. I believe it's been online about 2 weeks now. So we don't have any additional results on that. We're expecting some results by the end of this week for the previous month.
And is the permanent carbon filter in, or is it still the temporary one that's in there?
Still temporary, but we believe that this is going to be the permanent. That's what they're working with their contractor now to put everything in place and get this. So we should get some more permanent information from them, most likely with this current setup.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
I have a motion and support. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thanks. There's no unfinished business. Takes us to new business, item number 1. Just a moment. first item is a recommendation to issue a city council resolution requesting the issuance of special liquor licenses to the city of Wixom for the Wixom Community Center located at 49015 Pontiac Trail for the dates of February 15, 2019 and December 6, 2019, and Sibley Square Park located at 48900 Pontiac Trail for the dates of June 27, 2019 and July 18, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So move. Support.
These are annual events that we have, and it's pretty routine. Anybody have any questions, any comments, any points they want to make? Have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the recommendation to approve an extension to the mowing services contract with CSX Transportation, Inc., with reimbursement to the city in an annual amount not to exceed $1,500 until December 31st, 2021, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion? Mr. Beagle?
Thank you. Is this enough money per year to do this, seeing how the original price was established back in 2014? And I'm sure our prices, our wages and materials and everything have gone up since then too, so.
Yeah, looking at the property, we have an adjacent property, it's about a 1/10 of an acre, right next to the CSX property, which we would have to mow anyway. The CSX property has about half of the acreage that requires mowing. The property itself is a 1/4 acre. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to mow it. We estimate that, well, there's 28 mowing weeks that on average, that's what we do. So if you do the math, it's like $50 a time.
Okay.
And I think that's adequate for where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a motion to approve an extension of the mowing services contract with CSX Transportation, Inc., with reimbursement to the city in an annual amount not to exceed $1,500 until December 31st, 2021, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Tim. Next on the agenda is recommendation to award a 3-year biosolids sample monitoring program extension to Biotech Agronomics, Inc. of Beulah, Michigan, by authorizing the mayor to sign the contract extension on behalf of the city for a cost not to exceed $15,624 over a 3-year period. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion? Anybody? Yes, Mr. Smiley.
Thank you. Tim, or Mr. Sigma, you give me a basic overview of exactly what they're doing. What are they, most things are, what are they testing for? What's the value?
They're testing, Biotech is testing for the solids that we haul. Currently, we haul to a landfill. When we initially put out the bids in 2015, they were also hauling our sludge to fields and doing some field work as well. But now it's just sampling the solids that we with landfill. It is part of our residual management plan to sample them on a quarterly basis. Every now and then we have to add one here or there just to double check. So I added a couple of extra samples just in case we needed them. But the fecal coliform samples, each set of samples consists of 7 separate samples that estimate the amount of fecal coliform concentrations in the solids that are there. And
I think it's mostly just,
Yeah.
what are they looking for? Is there, hazardous materials, dangers of?
They run the heavy metals, the phosphorus.
Okay.
And that's really about it, just for, if we ever would test or be able to land apply again, we need to keep a consistent program in place for it. So
Okay, understood.
it measures the solids concentrations, whatever's in there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you. Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
Why aren't we using land application anymore?
So the, currently we're have the PFAS problem that we're trying to resolve, and that's the primary reason for that. We are dewatering with the sludge presses. We opted to do that because a land application had been at times a bottleneck to the treatment plant process. So, you know, that's why we were steering away from the land application piece. But the real reason currently is we're not allowed to haul to land.
So just to supplement that a little bit, when we go through this dewatering process, it basically results in a product that can no longer be land applied because of the thickness of it. So that's basically, we're getting away from that process.
Okay.
Yeah, there are other processes that can happen in the future if we would like to land apply in the future, provided PFAS is no longer in the material.
But right now, with what we produce, we can no longer land.
We can no longer land apply.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Gottschall?
Thank you. Just to clarify, the adopted budget's at 380,000, annual projected expense, obviously a couple thousand. Is that the total sludge removal account, or are there other activities that would go into that building up to the 380,000?
So that budgeted amount is for land that, to hauling it to landfill, and that's primarily what it's for.
So there's no other programs, that's just savings at this point?
Right. Well, no, we will, there's a cost associated with land filling this.
The only thing that we're paying for here is the sampling. So the actual, when we're taking it to the landfill, we're going to be charged tipping fees or whatever you want to refer to it as, and that's going to be covered with this $380,000 as well. It'll be substantial.
So that was a part of my question. Is there another part of the budget that is going into the 380, like other activities like landfilling and whatnot? So,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we've got motion to award a 3-year biosolids sample monitoring program extension, Biotech Agronomics, Inc. of Beulah, Michigan, by authorizing the mayor to sign a contract extension on behalf of the city for a cost not to exceed $15,624 over a 3-year period. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Drop your pen, Ron. Thank you. Full service, Mayor.
Favorite too.
All right. Next item on the agenda is City Council discussion of the process for filling a council vacancy. I'm going to just, to give a little context to this, I'll read the first paragraph of the administrative summary. Councilman Kennedy has requested the process, that the process for filling a vacancy and the City Council be discussed by council. This request was made prior to the City Council meetings with the replacement, with the placement of discussion on the City Council agenda delayed pending collection of some information on how other communities handle the process. So, Mr. Kennedy, I'm going to turn it over to you and see what it is that you're after here.
Well, last year when you became mayor, and as everybody's aware, and the seat was vacated, the process in which to replace a city council member seemed to be somewhat fuzzy to everyone, and we had some issues and problems at that particular time. It's not anything in our charter, and you said, I believe it was supposed to be, if we were going to change it, we had to do it through the charter. And I thought we should just get it on discussion to see what happens of other communities and the way they handle it, so we have a more clear, concise process. If, say, Pat Beagle runs for mayor and gets to be mayor next time, the same thing is going to happen again. So I'd like to see us get this kind of taken care of before we get to that part, so we have a more clear and concise way of doing what we need to do. I appreciate Mr. Brown has gone out and talked to and got information from a lot of different communities. Mr. Brown, did you get a chance to review any of these?
Yeah, I went through some of the information that was provided. Most of it was provided through Kathy Buck, our city clerk, and the listserv, or the forum that she utilizes. There's a variety of things that are covered in here. And it was just provided just for general informational purposes for council to have some point of reference about how it's handled in other communities. So, you know, it wasn't based on proximity or anything else. It was just a general request for information that Kathy and I placed on 2 different forums, and the feedback that we received is in front of you tonight, just as a food for thought kind of thing is all I would say. It's difficult to summarize them, but there's a variety of pieces in there.
So, you know, I would like to see us, as we had stated before, have a process where it's open to the general public to see everything that we do, that nothing is done behind, not that it's done behind closed doors, but I want a process where everybody sees everything we do. That if somebody was going to be looked at for being on city council, they would be brought, they fulfill an application, and we would review the applications, bring them up, ask them some questions, and then as a city council that was here, the 6 of us, vote and go through that process and try and pick the person in that manner. I know that's how South Lyon had done it. I know that's how Novi did it. And I know that's how Commerce Township had done it when they had their vacancies. So it's just a matter of a process that there's, and Mr. Leader, Councilman Leader, thank you for stepping forward. We wouldn't have known that you had any interest in it if, you know, we hadn't gone out and looked for that. So as over the past year, I've had a lot of people talk to me and sat there and said that they were interested and would have been more than happy. Like I said, it wasn't a matter that I was against one person or another. It's just a matter that I felt that it should have been something that was addressed openly to the public.
You know, I guess I'm going to weigh in a little earlier than normal tonight on this issue. You know, we did have some discussion after the appointment, and during the appointment process that we ended up filling the position. We did have some discussion about maybe the charter isn't clear, and maybe it needs to be clarified. Maybe there needs to be a charter revision. My thought was at that time, maybe what we would do is later on address it, you know, and maybe try to get some sort of charter revision to make it clearer. As time has gone by, I think that, well, I know that I've changed my mind. I think that the language in the charter is sufficient and does what it needs to do. I think there's a couple of points I think that need to be made. One, I think that for the 7 of us to sit here and make a policy that binds a future council of 6, whether it's, you know, whether we're on it or not, I don't think it's appropriate. I think that the charter indicates that the remaining council will will make the appointment. I think the appropriate time to discuss the procedure would be when a vacancy occurs. Perhaps the first meeting after the vacancy occurs would be the time that the council members could talk about that and see what they want to do, if they want to have some sort of interview process. I think the language in the charter is intentionally fuzzy, if you will, because I think that it wanted to, the people that wrote the document wanted to give a council some flexibility in order to do just that, to make a decision that's appropriate for that given time. And so I would, and also I would point out that I think that the process did work, and it has worked every time there's been a vacancy on council. There's been a process. It hasn't been the same process, but it has worked. The language has worked. And I don't think that there's any reason to set any kind of policy going forward. Those are the points that I'd like to make at this point anyway. Anybody else? Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you know, I've in my strong opinion back in November was that I feel we should adopt a policy that was similar to Hamtramck's, and that is that the next highest vote getter in the general election, if the vacancy was created as a result of a general election. That is a council person getting voted in the mayor. I have formed the opinion since then that there are actually two factors here. There's one, a vacancy that occurs midterm due to change in residence or conviction of a felony or for whatever reason that council person steps down. I'm very open to the interview process, posting it, and then doing a public meetings interview. But I still strongly believe that if it's as a result of a general election where a council member is elected to a 2-year term as mayor, I think it should go to the next highest vote getter. And the way Hamtramck does it, that person gets offered. If they refuse, it goes to the next highest vote getter. If they refuse, it goes to the next one. So I think it's two-faceted, and that's the opinion that I've developed over the last 2 months. So.
Thank you. Anybody? Mr. Smiley?
I'm kind of between the feelings of Councilman Kennedy and you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really like the idea of changing the charter to a point where, you know, we're locked into any route. I like the flexibility because, you know, there's a, you know, just the circumstances are different, and not locking in future councils, whether it be 20 or 50 years from now. You know, I don't want to do that to them or ourselves when it comes up again. I don't care for the route of taking the next, you know, next big vote getter, you know, exclusively. I do like, and I, you know, somewhat, you know, promoted the idea, you know, a year ago of having this open application process. So I don't know, perhaps Mr. Kennedy's intent or hope is to get the discussion out of the way now when there isn't a, you know, a spot in the balance, and we can just sort of, you know, maybe come to agreement for this group, but not necessarily locking any other group in for future years. So that's pretty much my take on it.
Thank you. Mr. Goshel?
Thank you. Thank you to the city clerk and city manager for doing some research and reaching out to other communities with this. And I recall when we were discussing this about a year ago at this point, I think toward the end of the appointment process, the city attorney had mentioned that she would start to put together some ballot language or charter amendment language. I know we haven't seen that yet. I think it is a good conversation to have. I don't think that you can just create a policy just for this sitting council now and then say it's open to whatever the heck anybody else wants to do in the future. I also don't think if we put forward some good policy, it has to get voted on. It would be a charter amendment. So we would be locking in future councils, but to me that's kind of the point of good council or of good policy is it's not at that point locking anyone in. It's a fair process forward. Well over the majority of the city clerks and managers that replied showed that their cities do take some form of application process, whether it goes to a township supervisor and they make a recommendation. I believe it was Grosse Pointe Woods takes applications to some committee of the whole, they were calling it, and conducts interviews and makes a recommendation. Just straight application process. I think it was Commerce Township said they assign numbers to people as they come to interview, so nobody would know who they are, but I guess if you turn up at a meeting, people might know who you are anyway. So there were a lot of answers in there, but well over the majority consisted of some portion of an application process. And I even believe that the city manager, who isn't with Hamtramck anymore, he had mentioned that they went through that when he was at Hamtramck, but even he would advise of taking applications. I think he had made a note of, but that is their city charter that you just move down the line, essentially, which poses a bunch of other issues to me as well, in terms of just offering the position to the 4th and 5th and 6th. The first is essentially, what if only 3 people run for council? Then where are you? And this kind of all goes back to like what is good policy, and it has to apply to me last time was very spirited because there was a nomination out and there was a face and a name to a position. And right now, thinking about what policy is, you don't really look at it that way. So, I mean, aside from just 3 people running, or there's a guy that pretty regularly, I guess, runs for president with a rain boot on his head, and the only time you get to see him is on the C-SPAN other candidate forums. And there's a lot of reasons to me that you don't just take the next person in line, because you run into that. There was a congressional candidate in Illinois last year who ran unopposed for the Republican ticket. White supremacist, Holocaust denier, that's nobody that should ever hold a seat in politics in America. So to me, I understand that it is the next person, but they weren't elected. And you could even then talk about a threshold for how many votes you have to get at that point. And because if 4 people run and the 4th place person gets like family and friend votes, does that really qualify? So to me, there's just a bunch of policy issues related to this. I think it would have to be a charter amendment, and I think we've been talking a lot about amending a lot to the charter, or at least reviewing it. So if that process does come around, I'd like to see this addressed in there. But for me, I think in any situation, I'd be a very strong supporter of just adopting an interview process for everyone. I think that's a good, fair policy for every situation, basically. I understand the desire to go with the 4th vote getter, but there are a lot of circumstances where other council members might just feel that that person doesn't represent the best interests of the city or has some outlandish views, and then to me that's locking them in. So I think if this does come up at some point, my opinion hasn't changed much in terms of it just needs to be an application process. But I did want to restate that, having given it more thought now over the last year. And we have goal setting, which we're going to talk about, or is getting scheduled. Charter review is one of my goals anyway. I've been talking with the mayor and other people about it. So I think it's part of a larger package, but definitely something worth addressing. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beagle.
Thank you. Thanks to City Manager Brown and our City Clerk Kathy Buck and our Deputy Clerk Crystal Apocolo for all the hard work they've done on this. And my feeling is if it was in the middle of a term due to moving out of town or a felony or something, as Councilmember Resnick stated, yeah, we do the application process. But if it's due to an election, this should be no different than a mayoral appointment, but maybe the mayor gives us 2 or 3 names to look at, and we can do the interview process and stuff ourselves instead of going through the application process. It's just like I say, it's like a mayor appointment for a board or something like that. If a name pops up on that board and we don't like it, we can call the mayor and ask him why we think this person's qualified for that position, and we can both state our points. And if he wants to continue to keep him on there, you can, or we can he can change his mind and find somebody else to do it. But to go through the special elections that cost money and charter revisions and things like that, I really don't think it's necessary when we've got many options that we can do without doing that. Thanks.
I might as well.
Mr. Leader,
Yes.
please.
So as the one person who actually went through it on the other side, I thought the manner in which it went down previous was fine, not because I'm sitting here, but it wasn't arduous. It was, we filled out, forms that I was interested. Every one of you called me, sat down, we talked, had a meeting, and you guys asked me questions, and if you were satisfied with my answers, I got here. If you weren't, you would have moved on to the next person. And I think that, rather than, I don't want to say don't make a huge deal out of it, because it's a big deal. It's an important position. It carries a lot of responsibility. But much like the deputy mayor said, it's not rocket scientists. We're not looking for, we're not looking to hire the next head coach of the Lions. We're going to go through.
Hopefully we do better.
Yeah, but we're going through you're going through a process. You find some residents who are interested, familiarized with, you know, whether they've been on planning commission or tax abatement or, you know, senior center volunteer, they just come to the meetings and talk. And as a council, I think we know who's interested in these positions or who would be good candidates. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, putting it out there, and if somebody jumps into it, like I didn't apply, or if there's somebody that you know, you feel would be a good fit, you know, go after it. Because if anybody is watching, all three of you, they know that if they would look and notice that there's an empty chair. And if they're interested, they're gonna come and go do it. I mean, it wasn't a secret that there was a vacancy on council. That's something that needs to be advertised. I mean, it could be Facebook to put on the website. But I think at one meeting, you put it out there that, hey, this position's open for the next 30 days. And then in the meantime, the acting mayor, whoever is the mayor at the time, would select a short list of candidates and go through the same process. I don't think it's, again, not trying to minimize it, but I don't think it's that complicated. That's all.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, I just wanted to get a discussion out there when a time wasn't that it was of great importance, and to see if we could come to some. I'm not looking to hamstring any future council, but it's just a matter of making good policy, and good policy comes from thought and discussion before you get to the point of having to do something. Like I said, and it was somewhat contentious after the first meeting. I just think that'd be something that we can avoid, we should try. And whether it comes to any kind of conclusion tonight or not, you know, just interviewing process, we were fortunate and have Councilman Leader. So thank you for allowing me to have this brought up in front. I've been trying to get this for a few months now.
And just one more point, contention isn't always a bad thing. I mean, sometimes it's good to have a little difference of opinion, I think, so it helps things. Okay, next item on the agenda is the second call to the public. I already read the rules to the public, so I will not repeat them. Anybody wishing to speak to the council this evening on any other items, any items on your mind that have to do with city business, please feel free to step forward. Come on up.
I hope you all have a good sense of humor.
Sure.
Before I begin,
For 5 minutes, I do, yeah.
I'd like to apologize for my unprofessional appearance.
You're gonna get his name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can speak into the mic a little bit closer. Thank you.
Robert Newcomb, N-E-W-C-O-M-B-E. I've been here 32 years. I'd like to apologize for my personal appearance. I walked up here in icing conditions because my subdivision isn't salted, and I almost fell and busted my arse about 3 times on the sidewalks, which aren't cleared. But that's not why I'm here. And I promise I won't take 5 minutes. I'm looking at the clock.
So am I.
You got the clicker going for
I do.
the chess game or what?
Right here.
So,
It's a cute little thing, and
no matter
say
what-
start time and
okay.
track, right there.
All right, God bless you, sir.
Thank you.
I just have to go back 50 years to college for a moment. My first public speaking class after I got back from Vietnam, when I went to college, after I got out of the Army. And the teacher gave us all 10 cans with beans. And anytime anyone said, when they were making a presentation, everyone in the class was instructed to throw a bean in the can, and you should have heard the roar with ands and uhs. So I've heard a lot of ands and uhs, but that's another topic. No matter what I say this evening, it's not about our police force. Absolutely not. I've spoken to the chief and one of his fine officers. I am here to complain about, gosh, I gotta get out my darn bifocal. I'm here to talk about traffic enforcement. primarily on the square on Pontiac Trail, not so much Pontiac Trail, because that's got a varied speed limit, but north of Pontiac Trail on Wixom, from Wixom Road on Maple and Potter, and then southbound on Beck, back down to Pontiac Trail, a nice little, fancy little square. Where do you describe that part? They're both, all those areas are 25 or 30 mile an hour tops. In March of this year, my doctor diagnosed me with a medical condition that required me, as an old guy, to start vigorous exercise every day. So every day, every single day, since April 19th, I have either ridden my bicycle 3.5 miles or walked minimum of 2.5 miles in that quadrant on sidewalks. Last year, a 14-year-old was killed by a drunken illegal immigrant on Potter. I expected a change in law enforcement enforcing speed limits. You know, speed limits and common traffic stops are how we catch bank robbers, murderers, who knows who. That man can tell you that. But to my knowledge, nothing has changed. In those months, since April 19th, walking every single day in that circle or that square, I have encountered police officers exactly twice setting up a radar trap. One of them I met back there, and I tapped on his window and he remembered me. And I thanked him for stopping the maniacs. Beck Road specifically, between Maple and Pontiac Trail, might as well be telegraphed. 55, 60 mile an hour cars. Now I know what speed limits are. I used to fly hang gliders. I know what airspeed is. And these guys fly by you like crazy. It's already covered most of these points. As I said, it's not about police officers. I think it's about leadership from this council. Why don't you have another cop that's dedicated to stopping maniacs speeding like this, killing kids? That's the question. I don't know if anybody's going to answer it, because I don't think you're typically in the habit of answering citizens. Once before, in the 80s, I got state laws changed to protect, imagine this, snakes. Took me 5 years, but I did it because I made it my hobby. Please don't make this my hobby, because I could get a radar gun and get newspapers out here to show you how 50% of the cars are going 30 miles an hour over the limit. Well under 5 minutes, I think, but maybe not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to council tonight on any agenda items or any non-agenda items? Anything on your mind? Seeing no one, I will close the second call to the public. Next on the agenda are the city manager's comments. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of things. There's an FYI provided through Community Services about the Department of Housing and Urban Development releasing the 2018 CDBG funding, our Community Development Block Grant funding. So those contracts we've had with Hospitality House, Haven, and Common Ground have been issued and are going to be subject to the reimbursement process through that process. The second thing that I wanted to make mention of, good news, we have the Oakland Technical Center teacher, Mr. Bill Dungan, that had been raising funds for our playground fundraiser for replacing equipment at Gilbert Willis Park. And we had another piece of good news from him and his students in that they had provided another $10,000 donation check to us, which brings their total of donations raised to over $87,000. The city's committed to providing another $25,000 in that fund as well, so we'll have over $112,000 available for that process and that project. So we'll be looking for some action there. Update on that, as well as Mr. Duncan and his students have talked to us about doing a community build, i.e. volunteering to be part of the assembly process there. So we'll be looking for volunteers through our Parks and Recreation Commission to supplement those kids' efforts. And we're looking forward to seeing that come to fruition soon. So that's a good FYI for us as well. Before I get to the last point, which is going to lead us into some discussion, I wanted to tease. I was going to point out that I didn't want to announce at the beginning of the meeting for fear of making our council nervous that we were having a live, if you will, 20-second delayed broadcast of our first council meeting today on YouTube. But then I saw that we had real TV cameras here with 3 or 4 different cameras, so I figured you guys were probably over the nervousness anyway. But that is our, we have put that change into place with today's meeting, and we'll have this meeting broadcast on YouTube, if you will, or not broadcast, but streamed on YouTube with just a 20-second delay, so that's something new for us, and we'll see how it impacts our viewing audience, as has been mentioned a couple times. So that's the only other thing I was going to add to it. The other item to discuss is related to Mayor Ziegler bringing up in a prior meeting his desire to have a goals and objectives meeting with the mayor and council and staff, and I threw out a date for discussion purposes after having checked with staff and with everybody that I could on the council as far as availability, and I understand that we do have one issue with it potentially, so we might have to look at an alternative. But we were initially going to look at Tuesday, February 5th at 6 p.m. I do understand that there might be at least one conflict, and maybe the second date to throw out there after doing a quick check on my end would be February 6th, which would be Wednesday, February 6th. So those are 2 alternatives to talk about for that goals and objectives meeting. And obviously, if we need to go to other dates, we can go from there.
Can we weigh in now? 6th is good for everybody, or?
6 is good.
6, I was the conflict, and the 6 would work better for me.
6th, okay.
6
So
sounds
this
like
is
a
all
winner
because
then.
of you?
Hold on, just
Yeah.
Tom, hold on, actually this week.
Oh.
I'm just checking.
Okay, at 6 o'clock?
Sounds like a plan.
Does that work, 6
6 to
p.m.?
8?
Yep.
Cake? No.
No,
Well,
no, but if
along
you're-
with the
but
stuff.
if you're offering lasagna maybe, or...
Ooh, that could be good. Pizza.
All right, 6 o'clock.
All right, so we'll schedule it for the 6th. We'll take care of that, and maybe we'll get some light repast. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are city council comments. Mr. Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brown, back up to the first of all, thank you to OTC for, what they're doing to make that playground fund get more robust. But do we have a goal amount we're trying to get what needs to be done there? Or is it, oh, sorry, wrong person.
I'll direct it to
Ms.
Deanne.
McGee.
Actually, with the last donation of 10,000, we've reached the goal. The goal was between 100 and 115,000.
Oh,
So we're
great.
right there.
Okay.
And the Parks and Rec Commission is already moving forward with the design, working with OTC, so we'll be back with the timeline.
Is it safe to say that playground equipment is past its prime?
Correct. It is in.
This needs it. Okay. I mean, my kids played there when they were little, and I don't think we've done anything since then.
No, we have not. It's time.
Okay, thank you, that's all. Oh, and then the rest of my comments, just, it was a thrill to have Mrs. Doran here. My kids went to Loon Lake. I don't mean to bring up my kids so much in this meeting, but my kids went to Loon Lake Elementary. We're big fans of Mrs. Doran. We still have contact with her. And, she's always been a hero to us, and this just put her on a new level. And I've caught myself many times, and I'm, saying she's our favorite teacher. There's a lot of great teachers there at Loon Lake and in the Wall Lake school system. We're partial to Miss Doran, but there's a lot of fantastic teachers there. And I want to thank them all, and especially Mrs. Doran. That's all, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gottschall.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Doran as well. Thank you to the city manager and city clerks again for their research on the discussion items tonight and getting information from a bunch of different cities. Luckily, you didn't have to make field trips up to the UP to get that info. Now you can just put it on the internet.
This email stuff's great.
But that's all I've got tonight. Be safe out there driving around. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to, say thanks to Laura Doran and also say that she personifies the Walled Lake education system, everything from administrators, paraprofessionals, and teachers. I've seen this more than once. They do a great job and they go above and beyond in the care for the child, and I think that's a very good thing to be said about our school district here. Also, just in reference to Mr. Newcomb's comments, I happened to notice a marked improvement when we had the enforcement action last summer after the death of that unfortunate death of that 14-year-old, particularly on Powder and Charms Road. The adherence to the speed limit, I noticed even today on the way to work that I can set my cruise at like 31, 32, and I don't get the gap that I used to get. I mean, people used to speed off at 45, 50 miles an hour on Powder Road. Now, everybody seems to be in lockstep, going somewhere between 31 and 34 miles per hour. So there's a marked improvement that I noticed. And I think we need a reminder from time to time. I think, the digital signage does work as a reminder to folks of how fast they are doing. And I would say that it was effective last summer. So, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leader.
Also, I don't know if it's congratulations, it's more of a thank you to Laura Doran for doing her job and doing her job effectively. Also, I'm looking forward to the goals session. I thought it was informative last year at this time when I was new and I learned some things. Again, it is icy out there, so be careful.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everything's already been said. It should be repeated about Ms. Dorn. Thank you for what you did. It's awesome, and thank you for being there. City staff, thank you for putting that information together. I know it wasn't just, grab it off the internet kind of thing. So thank you to everybody that was involved in trying to help me get that up for a discussion. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Beagle.
Thank you. I just want to also thank Laura Doran for the great thing that she did. It's the motto of Walled Lake Schools is every child, every day, and there's a great example of that. Thank the police chief. We have one of those digital signs in our neighborhood right now, and I've even noticed that in the short time it's been there, cars have been doing 30 and under, but I notice now they're doing 25 and under, so it's making its mark there, and appreciate that. We've got a couple of work anniversaries. Thank you to the fellows who have work anniversary. Thank you for your service to our great city. And thank you guys for your flexibility on the goal-setting meeting. I appreciate that. And we'll be there. Thank you.
I wish that the gentleman that was up here earlier, Mr. Newcomb, had stayed around. I find it difficult when people come up and address council and they don't stick around for the rest of the meeting because, we'd like maybe to respond to it, and unfortunately he's gone. I hope he reads the minutes. I think that it was an interesting comment, I think, that was made because you have someone that comes and says, I'm not criticizing the police, but then a moment later criticizes the police. There's no other way you could take that. I mean, it was a criticism of the police not getting out there. I think they're doing a great job. Ron, I'm proud of the police department and what they've done to up the traffic enforcement. I think that the guys are doing a great job doing it. That's not to say there's not going to be speeders, and there's not to say there's not going to be arrests or even accidents, but those things happen, and we got to do the best we can. The comment that was made about having an officer dedicated to traffic enforcement, I think he's been to some of the meetings I've been at, because that's what I've been talking about. I think that's something we have to look at, just because we've grown so much and we've got those traffic issues. And but I think with what you've got, I think you're doing a great job, and I'm real pleased with it. And I appreciate him coming tonight. I don't want to discourage anybody from coming, but I just had to make those comments about my observation. I wish you would have stuck around to have some dialogue with him. Anyway, nobody mentioned the article in the Smile column.
There was one? Oh, for you.
And I was surprised. I appreciate the Smile column writing the article on my trip and my visit with Mayor Watt.
Nice
Oh, the nice pictures, and I think I mentioned last time when I was there that when we were there, we spent, my wife and I and daughter and her husband spent 3 hours there with the mayor and the mayoress, and we had a great time. We toured the city hall, learned a lot about the city hall, and it dates back to before the First World War, and it was really an incredible visit. We had high tea, and it was real nice, and we exchanged gifts. And I don't know if anybody cares, but since I got to see,
We care.
I'm going to show you what we exchanged. I exchanged a couple of things. One of the things we exchanged were the pins. I gave the mayor the pin that says City of Wixom, and he gave me this pin, which is the shield of the Wirral. It's a pretty neat little pin, and I really appreciate it. And it looks something like that, which he gave me also, this plaque of the shield. And I thought that was kind of neat. And then we exchanged, interestingly enough, before I left, I took a key to the city, the small one, not the one for Santa Claus. But it was pretty neat because I got a pen and keychain. I think I might have mentioned this last time, to exchange with him, and he gave me the exact same thing with the Wirral on it as opposed to the City of Wixom. So I got that from him, and in addition to that, I got this emblem. It's a card with his signature, and I also have a booklet of the history of Wallacey, which is the exact city that the City Hall is in, and the Wirral, town halls and history. And I thought maybe I'd have this run off, and maybe you guys could keep it on hand at the city manager's office or the clerk's office in case any of my fellow council members are really interested and want to read about it, or anybody else might want to do that, or the 3 people watching at home.
Mr. Mayor, there is a process for doing a sister city. Maybe you should look into that.
Well, we thought about it. Now, this is a 300,000 person town we're talking about. There are sub-cousin maybe. There's a 66 members of council. Yes, it's there are 20 wards with 3 representatives in each ward. But it was a fascinating time, and I really appreciate the Smile column for the article. It was really a nice article, and really it kind of made my day, and I appreciate it. I'll be, oh yes. It's interesting because during the conversation, I asked if he'd been to the States, if they'd been to the States. They'd never been out of they've been to Europe, but they'd never been to America. And I invited him here. He's welcome here anytime. And I also get back to the sister city. I think that at one time I think we had a sister city. Steve, do you know anything about that?
We could expand the family.
Yeah. Sure. Brother city.
Who's our sister city?
I don't know.
Wolverine Lake.
I'm trying to remember.
Gosh, I don't know.
There's a plaque in my office.
Yeah, I remember from years ago, but Anyway, maybe it's time to revisit. We'll all go over there.
Yeah.
And I finally, I had a thought that we would at some point bring to the, did you say everybody see the pictures?
Yeah.
Well, I really like that look, and I was thinking that maybe what we should do
is put it in the budget, but then I started thinking, that might be a little bit too much to ask you guys to approve that. So I went out and got my own. And henceforth, I will be wearing this. With that, I'll entertain.
You should stand up so they can see your full glory. I guess.
So moved.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.